Tonight, President Trump is blaming the Democrats for the current impasse on immigration reform. Great opportunity missed, he tweeted today. Too bad. This at the end of a week that began with Trump showing off the art of the deal.
I'll take the heat. I don't care. I'll take all the heat you want to give me.
Flamboyantly hosting a televised meeting with leaders from both parties in order to demonstrate he's a very stable genius on complicated policy matters.
When this group and others from the Senate, from the House, comes back with an agreement, I'm signing it.
But what may have ultimately torpedoed a deal was the president's own vulgar language behind closed doors to describe the countries whose immigrants he'd like to exclude.
He said, put me down for wanting more Europeans to come to this country. Why don't we get more people from Norway? That was exactly what the president said.
The president's comments are a laughingstock in Norway. Elsewhere, the president's comments are a cause for outrage. And the African Union wants an apology not just to the Africans, but to all the people of African descent around the globe. At a town hall meeting in Iowa, Republican Senator Chuck Grassley had to answer concerns from his constituents about the commander-in-chief.
Are you personally concerned?
I'm not President of the United States. I would check on the President of the United States. That's my constitutional responsibility. And I guess I'm going to do what I can under our Constitution to make sure that nothing bad happens to our country.
About 500 demonstrators marched peacefully through the streets of the Swiss capital, Bern. They were protesting Trump's scheduled appearance at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Political and business leaders from around the world will gather for the forum on January 23rd. Trump will be the first sitting U.S. president to attend the meeting in 18 years. Swiss authorities are tightening security. Local activists are circulating a petition against Trump's visit. They say his policies are inhumane. More demonstrations are scheduled during the forum.
They are risking their lives to bring freedom to Iran. Iranian protesters from the streets telling Fox News they thank President Trump and the American people for supporting their uprising against the theocratic regime in Tehran. We interviewed the activists in Iran through a social media app, hiding their location. They do not want us to use their voices out of fears of reprisals. One protester told us, quote, "We thank you, President Trump. We call on all of the supporters of the people who oppress this regime from different fronts to put pressure with you and overthrow with us." The protesters we talked to were blunt. They will not give up, they vow, until the hardline regime is toppled. Iranian people want to achieve a democratic and independent government and play a role in it. In Iran, taxis and buses and public places, you heard people talking that they are happy that the United States and President Trump is actually taking actions on the side of the Iranian people. And as you know, the overthrow of this regime and establishment of a free country is in the interest of the entire world. Another activist texted us his answers to our questions. The president called the Iranian regime, quote, brutal and corrupt. How important was that to hear for you? He wrote, quote, he is correct and we approve of what he spoke. He should help the Iranian people. We need internet because the internet in Iran is banned. We ask President Trump to convince European Union to ban the mullah. The protesters are members of the banned opposition group, the National Council of Resistance of Iran. Its leader, Maryam Rajavi, has been directly blamed by the government for the unrest. Supporters have defiantly displayed banners with their photograph. The reason, one told us, quote, we have no life in Iran. Our life and death is equal. We have nothing to miss. We want freedom. Just poverty, unemployment, and corruption is the result of the mullah regime. Another was very clear. These uprisings have just begun. People are not at all willing to give up. Their patience has come to an end, and they have nothing to lose. Nobody wants to go back. We want to go forward. People want a free republic. That is what people have been chanting. We know that we need to be at risk for a revolution. This is an inevitable revolution, and we accept it. The protesters also called on President Trump to impose more sanctions on the regime. Those on the streets say they are looking toward the U.S. for inspiration and more help. In New York, I'm Eric Shawn, Fox News.
£1 billion of futuristic architecture with a moat for security. But now, after a lot of will he, won't he, Donald Trump will not be opening America's new London embassy next month. As ever, the president took to Twitter, claiming he'd cancelled his trip here because the Obama administration had sold the old US embassy for, he said, peanuts, only to build a new one in an off location for more than $1 billion. Wanted me to cut ribbon? No. But perhaps the prospect of this, on a much larger scale during the visit, put the president off. The Mayor of London said there would have been mass peaceful protests. Other Labour politicians agree.
Here you have the head of state of another country who's not only promoted hatred and division in his own country, but is surely, given his online activity, guilty of doing the same in our country too.
But Nigel Farage, who was the first British politician to meet Donald Trump after he was elected US president, says it's bad for Britain.
We have an American president who's the most pro-British there's been for many, many years. It's an important relationship. You know, I would like to see the president come here. And I think actually, I'd like to see him deal with his critics in open, proper, public debate.
So what about the president's claim that the sale of the soon-to-be former US embassy in Mayfair's exclusive Grosvenor Square was a bad deal? We don't know what Qatari investors have paid for a long leasehold on the building. The fact that it's a Grade 2 listed building would have dropped the price. But if President Trump is offended by some in Britain, many millions in Africa and elsewhere are today potentially outraged. Because during a meeting at the White House, Donald Trump reportedly made offensive comments about developing countries when discussing a deal on immigration.
These are shocking and shameful comments from the President of the United States. I'm sorry, but there's no other word one can use but racist. You cannot dismiss entire countries and continents as whose entire populations, who are not white, are therefore not welcome.
In London, only a wax model of the president makes it near the new embassy for now. He, or it, got a very friendly reception this morning. At times, the real Donald Trump has invoked anger in Britain. But for some, this is about the office he holds and the very close relationship between our two countries.
More than 20,000 protesters marched in the capital, Vienna. Some carried signs reading, "Don't let Nazis govern." Many are concerned that the government will try to cut unemployment benefits or assistance to refugees and immigrants.
There could be big cuts to social services. They'll ruin our great social welfare state. The government targets asylum seekers and will create huge divisions among the people.
We have a new government with an interior minister who wants to keep refugees in concentration camps. That reminds us of Nazi rhetoric. He used this language deliberately. This is an extreme shift to the right for Austria.
The centre-right People's Party failed to secure a majority in October's lower house election. That led it to form a coalition with the far-right Freedom Party, or FPO, last month. The FPO says it has left its founder's Nazi past behind and denounces anti-Semitism. But opponents accuse the party of being racist, sexist and anti-Jewish. Observers say it's rare for Vienna to see demonstrations on such a large scale.
Well, let's get the latest from Washington and our correspondent Gary O'Donoghue. And in terms of those comments, Gary, I mean, there's very strong words from the United Nations. I think Donald Trump's been talking about this just in the last few minutes.
Yeah, we've had, Jane, what I think is a denial that he used these terms. He's just tweeted this: "The language used by me at the Dhaka meeting was tough, but this was not the language used." Now, if that is a denial, that goes against what was said last night by the White House, who did not deny he'd used that obscenity during the meeting. And they didn't, and in fact they defended his sentiments during that meeting. So we'll see, I think, during the day whether or not he did actually say that, but certainly multiple sources have said that he did. What is interesting also is that senior Republicans here have not come out in numbers to condemn this. The leadership of the Republican Party has been absolutely silent on it entirely. And even the only African American senator, Republican Senator Tim Scott, he said it was disappointing, to say the least. So the criticism from the Republican side is quite muted, even though you've got the UN, as you said, and Democrats condemning outright this use of language, and I think poisoning the potential negotiations that are going on at the moment between Republicans and Democrats to try and find a fix for the dreamers, these young people who are here through no fault of their own.
All right, Gary.